It was a calm afternoon in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, a neighborhood known for its quiet streets and familiar faces. But on this particular day, something happened that no one saw coming. A call was made to the police, claiming a suspicious man was on the property of one of the homes. Within minutes, officers arrived, ready to investigate. The caller? A longtime resident with a reputation for stirring up trouble. The man being accused? Not just a homeowner, but someone whose very presence would soon shock not only the neighbor, but the entire community. What the neighbor didn't know, what they couldn't imagine, was that this man wasn't just another resident. He was the newly elected state senator, and what unfolded next would reveal more about the fabric of this neighborhood than anyone was prepared for. Bias, authority, and a stunning twist. This is the story of how one neighbor's prejudice exposed a much larger truth about power, identity, and the assumptions we make about each other. Stay with us as we uncover the events that turned a simple call into a moment no one will forget. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that challenge what you think you know. Mount Laurel, New Jersey. On the surface, it's a model suburban town, a place where people escape the rush of urban life for the quiet of tree-lined streets and manicured lawns. It's a community that prides itself on diversity, with families from various walks of life living side by side. But beneath this seemingly harmonious exterior lies a more complex reality, a history shaped by deep-rooted social divides and the lingering echoes of racial tension. Over the years, Mount Laurel has seen its fair share of challenges. Once predominantly white, the town's demographic has shifted, with an increasing number of Black, Hispanic, and Asian families making their homes here. For many, it's a fresh start. But for some, this change is met with resistance. Dan Skinner asks Robert Eggers whether his work is possible in a world not similar to the one he grew up in. Among Mount Laurel's newest residents is a man who has spent his life fighting for change. He's not just a neighbor, he's a symbol of progress, a newly elected state senator. Known for his calm demeanor and unwavering commitment to justice, he's a longtime advocate for equality and a dedicated servant to his community. For him, moving into this neighborhood wasn't just a personal milestone. It was a statement of belonging. Whether hosting town meetings, mentoring young leaders, or simply enjoying a quiet evening with his wife and children, the senator's life is one of service and stability. He's the embodiment of what many aspire to, a self-made man who earned his seat at the table and carried his community's hopes with him. But not everyone in Mount Laurel welcomed change with open arms. Living just a few doors away was Edward Cagney Matthews. For years, Matthews had been a fixture of controversy in the neighborhood, a man known more for his confrontational behavior than for his contributions to the community. Matthews had a history of documented incidents of harassment, hostility, and unchecked aggression. From using racial slurs to intimidating his neighbors, his actions were a stark contrast to the community's vision of unity. And yet, despite multiple warnings and formal complaints, Matthews remained a volatile presence that many had grown to fear. The tensions between Matthews and his neighbors simmered quietly for years. Some chose to avoid him entirely, while others tried to stand their ground. For the senator, however, Matthews was just another face in the neighborhood. Until the day their paths crossed, in a way no one could have predicted. It started with sideways glances, then escalated to muttered remarks. The senator, ever composed, brushed it off. But Matthews wasn't one to stop there. His actions were deliberate, calculated, a series of provocations designed to send a message. And on that fateful day, when Matthews picked up the phone and called the police, he thought he was asserting control. What he didn't know was that he was about to expose himself to the world. Narration. Mount Laurel had seen its share of disputes, but this was different. This was a confrontation that would lay bare the stark divide between perception and reality, between prejudice and progress. And as officers approached the senator, Matthews stood by, certain of his victory. He had no idea his world was about to change. This is not just the story of a neighborhood dispute. It's the story of a community reckoning with its identity, of a man forced to confront his own biases, and of a leader who refused to let hate dictate his place in the world. It started as a seemingly ordinary afternoon. The senator was outside his home taking a brief moment to unwind. But Edward Matthews had other plans. Emerging from his house, he approached the senator with a swagger, words dripping with hostility. "You don't belong here," Matthews shouted, his voice carrying down the street. What followed was a barrage of insults, accusations, and eventually, a call to the police. In that moment, Matthews wasn't just confronting his neighbor, he was weaponizing law enforcement, claiming the senator was trespassing and threatening his safety. The accusation was both baseless and calculated, an attempt to exert power over a man whose very existence challenged Matthews's worldview. But the senator didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He simply stood there, waiting as the officers arrived. When asked for identification, he complied without hesitation, handing over his state-issued ID that bore his title. State Senator. The officers paused, exchanging uncertain glances, as Matthews looked on, his confidence beginning to falter. What Matthews thought would be a moment of triumph became an embarrassment of his own making. His attempt to undermine the senator had backfired spectacularly. But for the senator, this was just the beginning of what would become a much larger battle. The incident didn't end with the police call. Within hours, word spread throughout the community and beyond. Social media erupted with videos of Matthews' tirade, his hateful language laid bare for all to see. Outrage poured in from every corner as residents demanded accountability. But amid the uproar, the senator remained focused, determined to rise above the fray. He issued a statement condemning Matthews' actions while calling for peaceful dialogue and mutual respect. For the senator, this wasn't just about one man's ignorance. It was about creating a teachable moment for a community grappling with deep-seated biases. The community wasn't willing to let this slide. Protests erupted outside Matthews' home, with residents of all backgrounds coming together to denounce his behavior. Meanwhile, Matthews found himself under scrutiny, not just from his neighbors, but from law enforcement. And the lesson here, I think, is not just from Matthews' background. Matthews faced charges of biased intimidation and harassment, a culmination of years of complaints filed against him. For many, his arrest was long overdue, a reckoning for a man whose actions had brought fear and division to the community. But even as justice seemed to be served, the incident revealed fractures within the neighborhood. While most rallied behind the senator, there were still those who defended Matthews, claiming he was being unfairly targeted. These voices, though few, added another layer of tension to an already charged situation. The senator wasn't alone in his fight. Community activists, fellow politicians, and neighbors rallied around him, using the incident as a catalyst for change. They called for open conversations about race and bias, demanding that Mount Laurel live up to its ideals of inclusivity. This is about more than one man's actions. This is about who we are as a community and what we're willing to stand for. But not everyone saw it that way. A small but vocal group defended Matthews, claiming his actions were misunderstood or blown out of proportion. Their resistance only deepened the divide, forcing the community to confront uncomfortable truths about its identity. For the senator, this was never about retribution. It was about progress. He continued to meet with residents, listen to their concerns, and push for initiatives that would foster understanding and unity. Despite the obstacles, he remained steadfast in his mission to lead by example. Through it all, the senator never lost sight of his purpose. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he also knew that true leadership meant facing adversity head-on and showing others how to rise above it. The day of reckoning had arrived. Inside the Mount Laurel courthouse, the air was heavy with anticipation. Edward Matthews, the man whose actions had sparked outrage across the community, now faced justice. The charges were clear: bias, intimidation, harassment, and creating an environment of fear and hostility. This wasn't just about one incident, it was about a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for far too long. So, over the course of the trial, the evidence against Matthews painted a damning picture. Neighbors described years of harassment, taunts, threats, and racial slurs hurled without hesitation. The videos that circulated online became key evidence, showing Matthews, in his own words, unfiltered and undeniable. A single mother testified about how Matthews had made her life a living nightmare, targeting her children with his hateful remarks. Another neighbor spoke of the fear she felt each time she stepped outside, never knowing what new insult or threat awaited her. The pain in their voices was a stark reminder of the damage one person's prejudice can inflict on an entire community. And then the senator spoke. With quiet strength, he recounted the day Matthews confronted him, the slurs, the accusations, the weaponization of law enforcement. He spoke not just for himself, but for every person who had endured Matthews's behavior. "This is bigger than me," he said. "This is about ensuring that no one in this community ever has to feel unwelcome or unsafe again." His words resonated deeply, drawing both tears and applause from those in the courtroom. After days of testimony and hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. The room fell silent as the foreman stood, holding the weight of justice in his hands. "We find the defendant Edward Matthews guilty on all counts." The words echoed through the courtroom, met with a collective sigh of relief. Matthews was sentenced to 8 years in prison, a punishment many felt was not just appropriate, but long overdue. For those who had lived in fear of his presence, the verdict marked the end of an era of intimidation. With the trial behind him, the senator returned to his duties with renewed determination. His presence in the neighborhood now carried even greater significance, not just as a leader, but as a symbol of resilience and unity. The community, once divided, began to heal. In the months that followed, new initiatives were launched to address the root causes of bias and discrimination. Workshops, forums, and open discussions brought neighbors together, fostering a sense of trust that had long been missing. For the senator, it was a chance to turn pain into progress. The house that once stood as a symbol of hate now serves as a reminder of the power of accountability. For the residents of Mount Laurel, it's proof that even the deepest wounds can heal when a community stands together. This story is about more than a single confrontation. It's about the courage to stand up to hate, the strength to persevere, and the belief that change is possible, even in the face of great adversity. The events in Mount Laurel remind us that prejudice blinds us to the true character of those around us. But in confronting that prejudice, we create opportunities for growth, understanding, and lasting unity. Thank you for watching this powerful story. If it moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that challenge perceptions and inspire change. Together, we can make a difference.